50 days that Donald Trump gave to Vladimir Putin, what can change during this period on the ground, in your opinion?
Well, first, I think that nothing will change, of course, because I think the Kremlin takes this 50 days as another sign of we have more time. It's not urgent. We have seen this yesterday with the Russian stock exchange reacting very positively to this so-called ultimatum, because some people were afraid that it would happen immediately and the Russian economy would take an immediate hit by secondary sanctions against China or Brazil or India, but it didn't happen. So in the end, 50 days, you're absolutely right, is a very long time. We have seen other ultimatums before from Donald Trump saying if Russia doesn't change course within 2 weeks, we will do something. And now it's not 2 weeks, but it's more than 6 weeks, if I'm calculating right. So I think there will be no changes, but I think at the same time, Russia will, the US will give the weapons, as they said, sooner than this. So they hope for an effect, of course.
I will ask you about the weapons, but before that, I'm just curious about this 50 days period. So politically, you're saying there's not going to be any changes, but we can see that there is, I don't know, an attempt coming from Russian side to occupy all these 4 regions that Russia has written in its constitution. So do you think there is a chance that during this period of time, Vladimir Putin will get what he wants, at least on the ground?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, this is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. I think you are speaking about the very dire situation for the Ukrainian army in some parts of Donetsk, and you are absolutely right. I think in Western Donetsk, Russia will probably occupy all of Donetsk Oblast in this Koma area, close to Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, within these 50 days. I think that's very much possible. But beyond this, they are close to 3 cities, which is Konstantinivka, Myrnograd, and Pokrovsk. And possibly the street fighting, the fighting directly for the towns will start within these 50 days. But then you have other towns. You have bigger towns like Siversk, you have Kramatorsk, you have Slovyansk, all these really major towns in Donetsk still under Ukrainian control. And I think there's no chance that fighting will only approach these towns by more than, let's say, 20 kilometers. So I think part of what Russia wants to achieve can be done within these 50 days. But in general, you also see that there is the attempt now in Zaporizhia to start an offensive. Marinivka, I think, was the first village to be captured by the Russians since 2022. But it took them, I think, 6 weeks for one village. So I don't see there's a chance that they will approach Zaporizhia city within these 50 days.
Okay, I'm sorry for asking you about this so closely, but it's really interesting. I mean, there are some publications about Vladimir Putin asking Donald Trump to give him this 60 days and now 50 days already, because it was before, like on 3rd of July. So it's like 10 days already went, and now we are talking about 50 days period. So is it a slight possibility that Vladimir Putin uses some new offensive weapons, for example, or maybe he chooses one particular direction which he be very aggressive into? Is there a possibility that we would be surprised by Russian army during this period of time?
Yes, I have seen very ambitious plans by the Russian army before, and also very ambitious goals by Vladimir Putin himself. You remember in last August when he gave the Russian army 1 month to clear Kursk, then it was another month to clear Kursk, and 9 months later Kursk was cleared from Ukrainian forces. I think maybe Vladimir Putin has told Donald Trump that he only needs 2 months for the summer offensive. But we already heard, you saw this probably from Russian war bloggers, that there will be a late summer offensive, a new offensive, which then has to be finished. Again, they said until the mud period starts, so until October or until November. So I think, again, 60 days is far too optimistic to reach any strategic goals. Still, as you and I said before, it is absolutely possible that they will concentrate on certain areas and say, okay, at least let's say we capture Myrnograd, or at least let's say we capture all other areas around Koma. So we are right at the oblast border to Dnipropetrovsk, a little further southwest. So all this is possible, but at the same time, you see all these new attempts. You see that they are trying to advance in Yunakivka, in Sumy Oblast. You see that they are trying to create the so-called buffer zone in Kharkiv Oblast. So there is continuous offensive operations which have no starting point and which have also no ending point, and surely no ending point in 2025.
Okay, I got it. Another big question is about the new military aid coming from NATO and, declared by Donald Trump yesterday. How serious is that?
Yes, I mean, what we really know so far is that there will be Patriot systems. This is what was confirmed by the German side as well as by Donald Trump and Mark Rutte. I think this is something we really can count on. Again, we had some very different predictions there according to the time frame we are talking about. Donald Trump said this will happen within a couple of days. I think the German defense minister then later clarified that this will take months, at least months, until the first of these altogether three Patriot systems is there. But still, we have confirmation that this will happen. Everything beyond this, all these talk you have heard since yesterday about Tomahawks, about Jessen, about hitting Moscow, this is all unconfirmed so far. So this is speculation. Some people are referring to some other people, which are all anonymous, and I really don't know if this is really happening. Right now, and I'm always emphasizing this, we still have a prohibition from the Western side to the Ukrainians to hit Moscow. So when I'm reading today in Financial Times...
This is what I was going to ask you about, exactly, Financial Times and targeting Moscow, that Donald Trump was actually encouraging Vladimir Zelensky, if it's the truth.
Well, I have seen, watched, and also commented on the Trump conference yesterday. And maybe you remember he said that we have wonderful nuclear submarines, and he doesn't hope to use them. And some people were asking me, should we have an article that he is threatening Russia with nuclear submarines? Of course not. This is rhetoric. This is what Donald Trump always uses to talk about his weapons. And also, of course, I can imagine that the way he talks to Volodymyr Zelensky, maybe he said, what about Moscow? Would you hit Moscow? Would this be possible for you if we gave you the right, wonderful, beautiful American weapons? And maybe Zelensky said, yes, if you give them, we can do this. But again, I think this is hypothetical, because how many targets do you have in Moscow which are worth hitting? It's not so many military airports. It's not so many structures. I think Kazan and Tatarstan is much more important for the Ukrainian side, because all the Shahed drones are being constructed there. And last but not least, I think there's a good reason to not hit Moscow, because so far we have, let's say, a tacit agreement between the Russian and the Ukrainian government to not hit political structures of each other. You remember one day Kremlin was hit some years ago.
With the drones.
Exactly. And according to my information, there was a dire warning to the Ukrainian government to not do this again. And it never happened again, because this is the way why Mr. Zelensky's presidential office is still intact. And this is the reason why no one ever hit the foreign ministry or the Rada in Kiev. I think there is an agreement right now to not hit each other, or where the political decisions are being made. And if this changes, that's going to be very interesting to watch.
And finally, I was wondering, so you have mentioned the Tomahawks and other weapons, but there is also ATACMS offensive weapons mentioned by different media outlets that can be actually delivered to Ukraine by the US or by the NATO allies. So do you think that if these weapons are actually delivered to Ukraine, it changes the situation on the ground? And what would be hit then by Ukrainian army on Russian territory?
Yes, I think ATACMS are very much on the table, because first we have been hearing about this already during Mr. Biden's era and Mr. Biden's term as a president. So I think these weapons are very much on the table right now. You know, President Biden has supplied these ATACMS with a lower range, I think 165 kilometers, and now they're talking about the higher range, 300 kilometers, which means it could not hit Moscow, but it could hit Nendorovo and many other airfields in Rostov and Krasnodar areas and so on. I think this could have an impact. Again, one more thing, what makes me think that this is on the table is that we have seen reports that the whole package with which America wants to sell to Europe and then they give it to Ukraine is about $10 billion. This is what I've heard. And we know that these two Patriot systems, or let's say 3 Patriot systems, they all cost together like maximum $7 billion. So we still talk about 3 billion, which have to be spent at some sort of weapons. And I think these offensive weapons could be on the table. You were asking about the effect. I think they have no short-term effect. I think this is very important to know. Hitting Russian logistics, hitting Russian air bases, that does not mean that the offensives will stop on the ground or the Russians will get slower on the ground. I think it is more having an indirect effect, and the hope from the West and from the Trump administration that if Russia is getting hit hard, industry, infrastructure, military, then they will have a political decision to not send, as they do right now, 60,000 people per month to Ukraine to fight and keep advancing. I think this is the hope, to influence Vladimir Putin and tell him, stop doing what you're doing on the ground in Ukraine, because otherwise more critical and sensitive structures in Russia will be hit.
Okay. Thank you so much.